Indeed.
Wonderful.
So, Mdletshe, right now, what we're gonna do is kind of we're kind of switching the topic, but it's still very together. It's very, very where we are in terms of racism and that within the church, that within the country, and how it of course from the apartheid time, with that it was literally a segregation of both parties. Then it was 94, we're getting democracy, that leading somewhere, and then we're now in 2023, still experiencing some racism in different ways, shapes, and forms, but we are dealing with it in different ways. Some ways we're not really dealing with it, some ways we're just letting it go, but some other ways we are, dealing with it and saying, let's put a stop to this. Um, I I kind of want to go back to go back in time in the video that is up on the Gospel Library about Umam Julia Mavimbela, and their experience in Soweto. One of the things that was shared was how in their integration they had one of a mishap. It was kind of a mishap. What I understand is when the white people at the time, they had their national anthem, and they had some of these black sisters coming, in the church, and they had a Relief Society activity. The Relief Society activity included both parties, whites and blacks, and the white sisters thought that it would be a good idea to sing the national anthem in front of and for the black sisters, not realizing that their national anthem was their national anthem, and not for everyone. It wasn't for every single person. Black people as well. Black people actually didn't like their national anthem that they came up with, and so that kind of had a mishap, and led to them thinking, who do these sisters think they are? What are they doing? But on their side, they didn't realize that this is a good thing. And I think this goes back to that thing you were saying about context. They were trying to do something that they thought was good, but actually backfired a little bit. So what would you say about racism within the church? We had a conversation recently about it, that there is still racism within the church. How does that look like, and what is that for us?
Well, so, and I go back, Sharagama, to what I said earlier on, and that is racism does not take place in the vacuum. No, racism does not take place in the vacuum. It's always supported by context of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So, a member of the church growing up in South Africa under racism, he will always present that. Doesn't matter what the situation is, always present as that. Let me see if I can think of an example of that. There was an example on my mind, just slip away. Because racism has a context. So one would meet a new experience. When you meet a new experience, you will not forget where you come from.
Okay.
You bring that into the new experience until the new experience takes over, and the features of the new experience have a dominant effect on you. Then you begin to shade your old you, because now you have a new you. Okay, I can think of an example. Let me share with you an example. So the church began in South Africa in 1653. From 1653 all the way till about the late 70s, early 90s, early 80s, there were no black people until we start having black people. So here's this church that has been led by white people and controlled by white people. When there are changes taking place, the changes that are bringing in black people into the church, there were some among our white brothers and sisters who struggle with that. And that manifests itself in different ways. I would use, for example, leadership in the church. So that's why then we don't start having Black leaders in prominent positions such as a stake president, mission president, area 70s, until way into the 2020s. And yet, across the border in Zimbabwe, further up in Congo, further up in Nigeria, as early as the early 1980s, the church was led by a Black person, whether they were area 70 or stake president. But in South Africa, it would take another 20, 25 years before you could have Black people in those positions. So the whole question then of context become very real. And some of us were courageous enough to ask why we don't have Black people in this position. We were told that they were not ready. The next question you will ask is, but are the Zimbabweans ready? They've got Black people. Are the Congolese ready? They've got the Black people. Are the Nigerians ready? Because they've got the Black people, the same Black people, and they're leading the church. But in South Africa, it takes that long. So you joined the church in the late 80s as a Black person in South Africa, but a white person joined the church in the late 80s. He can have a leadership position because he's ready, but the Black person is not ready. So then what I'm talking about, the whole question of context, become very real in terms of how then we manage the church and how we do things. And right now, the church is very much led by Black people in pretty much all of the aspects of the church in South Africa. The very same people, Black people that were sitting in the same pews with everybody, are the very same one that are leading the church. What has happened? You remember this experience I told you about, and that is, you have your background experience. You come into the new situation, you bring it with you. But what does it take? It takes you having more and more of the experience that will cause you to change and alter your view. And then if you don't have the right experience in the new place that will cause you to change your view, then you remain with your previous teachings that you have, your previous understanding that you have. So now all of a sudden, what happens in South Africa is that not only the church needed to change, but the work environment changes. Black people are starting to lead even in the workplace. Black people are starting to lead even in the larger and the bigger society. And then the church is left with no choice, but also to say, well, also the Black people can lead. So which means that they can become bishop, they can become stake president. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. The context again becomes very important and very, very critical in terms of how we make decisions and move forward.
So I would like you to share your experience that you had on mission. That I think will also add to the explanation you just gave us. The one where you knocked on a door and this brother came out. I think it was a brother that came out and gave you the news, an interesting fact that you didn't know about the church regarding to Blacks in the priesthood, and your response to it, and what happened for you to kind of overcome that. Could you please share that with us?
Well, you want me to share the whole story or just the end of it? What do you want me to share?
All of it. Oh, yeah, all of it. Yeah, let's go for all of it.
Well, so my companion and I arrived at the home of this man, and it was my door. It was my door to knock at. And when I knocked at this door, this brother came up, and he had dreadlocks, very striking man, Black, and very articulate. And I introduced myself as a missionary from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sometimes referred to as Mormons. And I mentioned to this, when I finished saying that, this good brother said, "You were a Mormon." And of course I said, yes, I am a Mormon. He said, well, it's surprising that you are a black man and you're a Mormon. Do you know that your church is a racist church? And then he continued to tell me that it used not to ordain black men into the priesthood. And that caught me by surprise, because in 5 years of membership in the church, no one had mentioned that before, that there was a time when black men could not be ordained into the priesthood. And this stranger is just revealing that to me. So I was very upset and very angry by that, because I just could not see myself representing a racist organization. But my mission president was a giant of his time, was able to calm me down to the point that I was able to stay on the mission and finish it without being worried about what I've been told by this man. So a lot of people have asked me questions, why it took 5 years for you to know. I mean, you've been a member of the church for 5 years. Did we talk about it in the classes? Of course, nobody talked about it in the classes. Nobody talked about it in the Sunday school. And again, look at the context of South Africa. This is 1980, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. I go on a mission, and apartheid is fully in place. Nobody's going to walk and say, you, all of you are cursed. You don't have a priesthood. You know what I'm trying to say? All of you are different from me. That's why I don't have a priesthood. Nobody's going to walk and say that. So people choose not to talk about that topic, not to discuss that topic, because it could have infuriated a lot of black people and cause the church to be labeled something different. And so, but I was able to navigate that. It did not end there. The whole question of black and the priesthood became a really a troubling thing in the church, because it took the church more years to remove that teaching from its books. You know, you'll always see it in the books. In classroom, in Sunday school classroom, you'll always hear people commenting about that, for us who joined the church in the 1980s. So we needed a new generation, but we needed a whole complete curriculum. And that curriculum had to be used by the next generation before we can begin to not to have such a teaching. So the church sometimes as an organization is very good in changing a policy, but it just takes a little bit longer to change a practice, because everything we have is written in the books. And to begin to get rid of the books that have those kinds of teaching, it takes a generation. I have a bookshelf, and the bookshelf has all kinds of things. So which means that when my children go to the bookshelf, they can pick up a book that used to teach about the practice that we have in the church that is no longer valid.
Yeah.
And that's why then the black and the priesthood thing lingered in the church for such a long time, because it was with us as a part of something that we have it written down, whether in the table of our hearts, whether in our brain, or in a real print out there. It was always around. But when the church began to remove the books that have that, remove the teachings that can lead themselves into that, and then of course the generation that this teaching was ingrained to began to die, then we began to see things differently.
We have been fed, and I think we have a lot of things to think about. I think there's a lot of ignorance, and not just ignorance, but just not knowing. I remember on the very same topic, Elder Quentin L. Cook posted a worldwide devotional, and speaking on 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 this topic, but with other topics as well. The sister who was accompanying him was a church historian, had a PhD. She said something about the fact that when she was a young girl, she read something in a Liahona/Ensign magazine, that it was there, but then there were people who said, well, the church has never taught me about ABCD, all right, or the church never said this. And then she said, well, I was a little girl when I read that, right? And so the reason I'm making this comment, even though it might seem not related to what you're saying, there's two things, right? One, there might be misinformation in books, like you're saying right now, and it takes a generation or two to remove certain teachings. But secondly, sometimes we as members of the church don't study. We will hear someone say something and we'll take it to be doctrine, or we'll take it to be the word, and we'll perpetuate it without ever actually studying it. We'll say maybe the church is hiding this, and the church is hiding that, and they're not speaking about this. Whereas if you had just gone to the library and go on your bookshelf, you could find an answer to a question you've had for a long time, because maybe a prophet somewhere has made a comment on that, or So I know that's maybe a little bit off of what you're saying, but it's just a thought that came to my mind as you're speaking now about information that we have in the church. We want to transition, President. We've taken time into this topic.
Yeah, maybe let's end on this topic, but and then I'd ask Sharagama that let's have 2 sessions of this, so that we can have. But let me just say one thing though, and that is, you have mentioned really some powerful things here about people in the church not studying and relying on the hearsay. Yeah. And then believing the hearsay, then they themselves going into the source and learning and understanding. I think that as members of the Church of Jesus Latter-day Saints, we have more than enough information in our gospel library. Mm. And I think really, if you really want to understand the church, the question is, are you spending enough time studying the gospel? But also studying the words of the living prophets, so that you hear what they're saying. Really, that's what differentiates this church from any other church, is the living prophets. If you hear something that is unsettling in your heart and in your mind, that was said by the leader of the church that lived 50 years ago, 100 years ago, why don't you look for the modern day prophets and hear what they have taught on that very topic that troubled you about something you have heard 50 years ago? And then accept a modern day prophet than the old prophet. And I think that as members of the church, we need to distinguish that and understand that. Mm. The moment we begin to understand that, it will begin to make a big difference in how we view the church. We're not naive that there were things that were said and done in the past in the church that, that may have caused us to question some few things. But then ask yourself, what is the view of the modern day prophets regarding that very topic? If people can begin to do that, then, and I think that then the church will be in good hands, and I think that the church has a future. But people don't. For me, I don't listen to somebody who tell me about the book that was written in 1970 or in 1980 that they read. I don't listen to those people, because I'm saying to them, there's a modern day prophet, and this modern day prophet, this is how we view things, and this is a person that we should be. And then they further argue, said, but he was, well, you're the one who's saying that he's no longer. He was a prophet, he's no longer a prophet. What is the modern day prophet said on that very same topic? And that's the one I'm going to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Jeremy, you want to close it for us?
I think so. I love that. I've never looked at it like that. I think the one thing we did even on mission, you know, when we were trying to study certain things, we will go and study everything. You know, like there was the book Mormon Doctrine by Bruce R. McConkie. That's where we're trying to get a lot of information, you know, and we're going to try and learn more and more from all these older prophets. But, you know, what is our prophet today saying? And today our prophet talks a lot about love, ministering, and peacemaking, right? And that in itself, I think, is the medication for the fighting that we have done, that we are doing, and that we are going to do in terms of racism and all these other issues that we may have. It's the love of Christ that we need to maintain, that we need to strive to have and strive to give. And that makes a totally big difference if you are striving to love someone. You might not like them because of some things that they do, but the Lord says, love them, show them love, serve them, you know, give them the better opportunity, the same way that Black people were given an opportunity to serve missions. And in order to have somebody like Brother Mdletshe, who has served in the capacity that he served, he took that opportunity as a young man to serve a mission. And that catapulted him to be where he is today. For us who look up to him, for us as young men and young women who look up to him and want to, you know, reflect that. And all Brother Mdletshe has done in his life is to reflect Jesus Christ, is to try to reflect Jesus Christ. So us trying to do the same thing, I'm not going to say that it's going to get us in the same places that Brother Mdletshe has, but it's going to help us to receive the happiness that he has received in his service in the course of his life. You know, I'm absolutely grateful for this conversation. It has opened my eyes. I've tended to be somebody who's very naive to the conversation of racism and all these things, especially when I was younger. Growing up, Model C school, I tend to speak to certain people from the township, and they look at me like, "Hey, your English is too good. You know, I can tell you're not from around here." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's the case, unfortunately, you know." And then I'm looked at as a coconut, unfortunately. But that's another conversation for another day. But at the end of the day, you know, we all have an opportunity to learn, to serve, and to grow. And that's what we need to take, is that opportunity.
Thank
Brother
you.
Mdletshe,
Yes,
thank you
that's
so
correct.
much for being with us. We appreciate your time. We look forward to the second session, where we will be fed again. We have a lot to unpack, but we appreciate you being with us. Are there any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience?
No, that's good. And I look forward to the next session.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so just let me know and give me enough notice, and then let's see if we can get to a next session. And I hope that I've given you some food for thoughts as you prepare for other ones. But again, just one thought I wanted to say, and I shared this with Elder Shadagama earlier on, and that is, I do not, my discussion with you tonight doesn't make me a church representative. I've shared with you my opinion on different topics that you have raised, and but I've also shared with you my testimony on certain things that you have raised, and I've shared with you my very personal experience. And some of the things that I might have said may not represent the church, nor be the teachings of the church. I think that with your audience, that must be very clear, so that Brother Mdletshe is not seen as somebody who's speaking for the church. No, I'm not. I'm just a guy that happened to be around that understand a couple of things and is sharing with you, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We appreciate that.
All right. Good night, brethren.
Thank you so much, Rabba. We really appreciate you.
I look forward to your next session.
100%. Thank you
Enjoy
so
the
much.
evening. Please say hi to Mama for us as well. and thank you for allowing us to steal you for an hour.
No problem. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, President Kippa.
All right. Now, thank you everybody for watching and enjoying that session with us. It's been an amazing session with Brother Khumbulani Mdletshe, and we hope to have him in the next session. Another set of good things to talk about with the big man. Thank you everybody for participating, and we'll see you next time.